What's up guys, the Strong Boys 19 here. This is going to be another tribute video, and it has been not a long while since I did my last one. The last one was on Paul Di'Anno, the former vocalist of Iron Maiden. But I want to make this video and dedicate it to him. This man worked pretty much since the growing birth of one of my most favourite genres of all time, progressive rock. And what's even more special about him was that he was one of the founders for one of my most favourite bands of all time, King Crimson, Peter Sinfield. He passed away yesterday at the age of 80. We know King Crimson had made a ton of albums, made a complete, influential and outstanding legacy. We love Robert Fripp to Greg Lake, John Wetton, Bill Bruford, Tony Levin, many others, but one of the best people who grew the artistry of King Crimson's music and presence was Peter. He worked for King Crimson for their first 4 albums. Not only he worked for this band, but I will briefly mention other bands that he worked for. He was known as the lyricist and a producer, but he worked for King Crimson since the very beginning until the early 70s. This is the debut album, In the Court of the Crimson King, which is one of those no introductions needed albums. This is one of the best albums of all time, not just for the 60s and for the genre itself, but of music. And one of the best things about this album is the lyrics. Peter's lyrics were meaningful, powerful, and so beautiful, full of poetry and a ton of description. This album is one of those that still stands the test of time. And recently this album turned 55 years old last month. Insanity. Not my favourite King Crimson album, but this is still one of the classics. Their second album, In the Wake of Poseidon. For King Crimson fanatics like myself, I think this is a brilliant album. I do get it with the criticism of this being somewhat of a similar sounding album to the debut, but this is still an awesome album. It's one of my most favourites, and some fans would agree with me on this. This can get pretty overlooked. Great album. His take for the production as well was really, really good. And I think that his take for producing what the band wanted definitely added so much of the band's own musical presence, a unique sound. Lizard, by the way, one of the most beautiful album covers I've ever seen. Not just for a prog band, but of all time that I've looked at. Another great album, very, very good. And the final album that Peter was involved with through the different lineup changes that happened in the band's history, Islands. I do love this album. And for those who have heard what I thought about this album previously, I think this is an underrated classic. It is different, like Lizard, but this does contain atmospheric, beautiful and textured pieces of music the band had achieved here. Not many fans of the band love this. Some people see this as the weakest or one of the weakest. But I do think it deserves a lot of appreciation. Love this one of my most favourites. After King Crimson, he worked for Greg Lake's other band at the time, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. This is the classic that many people see this as that word, Brain Salad Surgery. This is the only album of theirs that I've got. I need to get the other ones that are as well received and praised. Peter worked for this band, for this album, all the way to the meme album, the notorious panned album Love Beach. I do like Emerson, Lake and Palmer. He also did the production work for PFM's album Photos of Ghosts. PFM, which I don't want to butcher these words. I've tried, but my Italian pronunciations are not very good. I think this band deserves a lot of the credit too. The first two albums are classics, the second one being my favourite, but if you have heard of those albums, Photos of Ghosts pretty much has the same material, but the band decides to include different recorded and translated lyrics to English. So you will hear the same songs from before, but on here it's the same music but with the translated to English lyrics. This is a really, really good one. He also worked for Roxy Music, only for their debut album. And speaking of Brian Eno, he worked for Brian Eno later on. And not only he was working through these musicians, but he worked for other people in the 80s to the 90s, like different genre artists like Celine Dion and Cher. David Cross as well. But I think most people, like myself, would love to remember Peter's contribution and his professionalism through his outstanding work for King Crimson. Completely unexpected. And if you have not listened to these King Crimson albums before, don't listen to just the sound of the vocals and the music. Look at the lyrics. Just acclaimed piece of imagery and presentation into music. My heart goes out to his friends, his family, and for everybody else who knew him, and for him to be one of the founders and popular figures in progressive rock. Peter was well respected and will always be respected. A great achiever for what he did for other bands and for his own career. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll keep you guys posted for more videos in the near future.